everybody goes through an emotional experience as well as an intellectual experience. We grow up, and many of us are taught to learn about the importance of IQ, and it is important, and you should look at that as important, but not with neglecting the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence.
Envisioning the post-COVID era together, one podcast at a time. This is COPING-20.
Hey, Stephen here with COPING-20. Welcome back. This is episode 21. Wow, we are already into March. Today is March 3rd, and I'm really excited. I have a guest that I had on last year towards the very beginning when this was coping with COVID. It's now COPING-20, obviously. And I wanted to have her back on because this woman's work is so profound and so powerful. And her book that we talked about last time, The Undercover Superhero, it's so powerful that I worked it into some of my teaching material for personal growth and development curriculum. And I had her on the show and we talked about that. And we talked about emotional intelligence. And she's not only an author, she's a certified professional coach. And I'm going to have her introduce herself again and tell us a little bit about what she's doing now. And I really want everybody to take notes with this episode. And I want you to put in the comments of this video, what is something that you really took away from this, and maybe something you want us to follow up on and address in a future episode, because everybody focuses on, and I remember she said this last time, we focus on IQ, right? But we don't focus on the EQ. And let me tell you, we're now going on a year into this pandemic here, at least in the US, with these restrictions and everything. And this is something that if we weren't thinking about it before, we need to be 110% thinking about it now. So Miss Anita Myers, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we met, first of all, and you were part of the Undercover Superhero book launch. You were there. That's when I met you. And it means so much to me that you were able to do what you did with the information you found in the book. That means a lot. Thank you for having me on here. Yes, I'm Anita Myers, and my business is called Interscope 365. And if you hear what the words are, it really means look within every single day of your life, every single day of the year. And the whole premise of my business is really about what matters in my heart that I've noticed over the years of my life growing up. That is shared in that book, The Undercover Superhero, that we covered before. But in general, I noticed that I'm not alone in this, that everybody goes through an emotional experience as well as an intellectual experience. We grow up, and many of us are taught to learn about the importance of IQ, and it is important, and you should look at that as important, but not with neglecting the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence. So I am an emotional intelligence strategist and trainer. I provide coaching and training services in the world of emotional intelligence. So, if you're thinking about, I like to use the word emotional landscape. I do use the word, I use the power of imagination because that really helps us create what we want to see in our lives. You think of vision boarding, people talk about, you think of inventions. So imagination is very important to be able to see what our life can be like as we get older, but no one really looks at the landscape of our emotions. We kind of work on autopilot. So I have really dedicated myself to appreciating intelligence. It is required. It's good to know the facts and the truth. You need to operate with that. But then when you place the proper emotion behind your truth, knowing who you're talking to, what your atmosphere is, the idea of emotional intelligence is identifying and managing your emotions as well as the emotions of others. So when you can actually harness your mind power on that, then you can actually master your universe. Universe meaning the world that you live in.
Wow, that's amazing. Such a powerful introduction. And Now, with what you do we talked a lot about your message and what your mission is last time, as far as the book and what you do. But being a certified professional coach, I really wanted to dive into this because I think that this is so important right now, because a lot of people, they wait way too long to, in my opinion, to really go for what they need, go for what they know that they need help with. And what are some of the things right now with this situation we're in, right? Where it's just, like I said, we're going on a year here with this pandemic, with the restrictions, the back and forth. There's been a lot of contradictions. And I understand scientifically new information comes out, we have to adapt with that, but there's just been things that are totally contradictory, that are not scientific, they're political. You can eat outside because there's no evidence it spreads outside as long as you're 6 feet apart, but then you can't eat outside. We're closing it down with no evidence. Or you can eat outside when we build a structure and then there's no circulation, so it's more dangerous than eating inside. You can't go to the beach. That doesn't apply really here in Illinois, but in some parts where, hey, you can't go to the beach, even though we know that there's health benefits to doing that. You can socially distance. There's a lot of contradictions, and people see this back and forth and this lack of consistency. And one of the things I know from, a learning behavior standpoint is you got to be consistent. And this whole concept now that we have amazing therapeutics, we have an amazing vaccine that's more effective than anyone thought the first vaccines would be, but still cancel 2021. Don't even think about doing anything until Christmas. And I think that we got to be really careful with the contradictions and the predictions that change every other day, because it's really taking a toll on people's mental health. And I'm seeing that, I'm sure, and I'm going to ask you what you're seeing with that in a minute here. But I think that nobody's really going to stick to that at this point. And we need to give people guidelines, from officials. They need to be giving people guidelines they can stick to. And we need to, as mental health professionals, be able to say, okay, we understand that this is, the cure can't be worse than the disease at this point. So what are you seeing on your end as far as being a CPC, some of the issues people are struggling with as far as just this constant, great news one day, terrible news the next?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people that are, it's disheartening because of what you said, and you're accurate about what it is. There's so many different bits of information. There's things, there's so many topics that we can talk about just by what you said for the past, since 2020 all the way till now. And what we've seen happen is narratives are very different all across the board. There are people who are, I think when you look at a human being, there's spectrums of how we are. There's those that are vehemently going to follow whatever is told to them. And there's others that are vehemently against, they go against the grain. They're always, swimming against the current, all of these phrases. But in the end, where we are, I see that human beings, like, whether they know it or not, their brain loves to have a pattern. They love to have a routine. Many think that they don't need it, but I think about the child that goes to school, that's the wayward kid that gets into trouble and what have you. And then you hear about the parent that finally puts them, or even the child themselves, if they get to the point of high school, they then put themselves in the military services. And there's other types of examples like this, but they're looking for order. They're looking for some kind of routine, something that can keep their emotions in place. And I'm speaking, there's more to it, but I want to say that when the brain gets a pattern, it wants to hold on to it, whether it's being lazy or being active, like whatever it is. It's like the body is like, stick with this. We'll be with you through this whole thing where we got you. But the moment you change the pattern, there's this withdrawal, like, what people that are on drugs, there's a withdrawal that happens. We have our own natural drugs, our own natural highs that are developed in our bodies. And so when our brain decides, here's different things happening, think about when you're going on a vacation and you're driving and you can't go on that road. You're like, you have a minute. But you then have to kind of get yourself together. And what is the backup plan? What is the structure you go to? Like, what's the plan of action that you have when things that you want to have happen don't happen for you, where do you go to recover? Where do you go to decompress? The things that take place to keep love alive through the challenges. So in what I've seen with people, I've seen a lot of question marks, a lot of feelings of despair, a lot of they think they know, they feel it's right, but then when we follow what's being told on the screen by different leaders, doesn't matter from president all the way down to our governor, our mayor, when we watch things said, and then we see the kind of narratives of how people speak, and then you watch it on social media, it really does cause an emotional storm. And a lot of people are trying to run for cover and they don't know where to go. So, what I do when I work with people that reach out to me, they need to decompress, they need to vent, they need to get those emotions, whatever they are, out. So if they're angry, they're more than welcome. Anyone's welcome to call and they get that anger out. But once it's out, they almost want to cry because they've held so much in that they don't know what direction to go. Other people that I've noticed are people that are like, talking about masks, 1 minute I remember, when it all began, we're wearing gloves, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your face, mask, wipe everything down, the panic, the fear, those things are at the foreground for us. Everything's fear. Then you start seeing that people are getting sick. Then you hear that people are dying. Then you hear the numbers. So these things are things that can cause major anxiety. It can cause us to make really bad decisions. And on the negative side, we have lost lives that weren't involved with COVID. We have lost lives because the depression had brought them down to a place where they didn't want to be here anymore. They were so unhappy. And I'm not talking just about adults, I'm talking about children. So there's a lot of really negative outcomes happening from this storm, but the positive things that are coming from it are what I'm looking at as well, more because we need it. When you're in a place of despair, what do? Do you go to a bunch of people that are feeling despair, or do you go to people that are feeling influential, that can kind of talk you into trying this route? So I know for me, I have my little toolbox in my back pocket of where I go when I see different opinions and I see the way people are talking with each other. And I say to myself, okay, you know what? The only thing that matters to me, Stephen, is the concept of love. Because that's what makes the world go round. That's what makes the world go round in every regard. The opposite of love is apathy. So
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And I think that, last year in June, it was kind of like, for me, it was kind of an intermission from, because that was one of the things. I'm a very health anxious person. So I said, all right, let's jump in. Let's do COPING-20. Let's figure this out. And we don't really address that too much on the show. It's more about other domains. How does COVID affect, small businesses, individuals, mindset, things like this. But in June, I kind of took a balanced middle of the road approach with it. I will say you might disagree with me on this, many do, but I really felt that the Governor Pritzker in Illinois did a good job. We had the numbers low and I felt it was relatively safe. Beyond that point, July, August, increasingly so as the year went on, I switched to a zero tolerance for risk approach through January, and I was, I locked everything down. I said, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to, exceed the guidelines. This is what, I'm going to, you name it. I have all these different masks and respirators, things like that. Nothing that I would be taking from healthcare, but, industrial respirators and things like that, and I didn't do anything that would encourage the spread. And now, obviously I am vaccinated now, so that does change a lot, but I think even if I wasn't, I'm starting to go back a little bit the other way. And I don't know that I would use the word balanced again. I would use the word syncretic. I think that what I want to do with this show now is deliver a syncretic approach and mindset to COVID-19, because here's the thing. The person who got really sick, just like I've always talked about, I said, you get somebody sick, you're not transparent about what you're doing, you get somebody infected, and there's no liability, and that their story needs to be told of how serious this is. At the same time, the story also needs to be told of the person who's doing everything right, and they're told, I need to financially screw myself for the rest of this year as well. I barely made it, and now I need to shut down for 21. Or even if not shut down, people need to be told not to come to my business because it's not essential, or they need to be told not to come. The restaurant's open in Illinois, but with this guideline here or that guideline there, you still shouldn't do that, even if you're vaccinated, or even if, even though all data is indicating that it's going to work, the vaccine's going to work exactly as vaccines generally do. And I think that it's to the point where we really have to, okay, holiday season was terrible. I get that. I'm not denying that. And I never would deny it on the show. But now we're at the point where March, we need to start pulling out the toolbox. I call it the weigh the scale, to weigh the pros and cons. We need to transition to negotiating the best quality of life to the least amount of risk to other people, certainly ourselves, but even more important to other people. And as long as we're being transparent about that, like March 14th, I'm going to be, it's been a year at that point, I'm going back to a restaurant, and I've talked about that on the show before, about how restaurants have struggled, as one of the most in this,
Yeah.
But it's an interesting perspective that you shared from that, because a lot of people are, it's the concept of push-pull, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes today, no tomorrow. No tomorrow, yes the next day, and it breaks that pattern. And I just think that what you're doing is absolutely incredible. And this isn't just about, because I know that there's a lot of domains to what you do, and I want the listeners and the watchers to understand that your emotional intelligence, what you do with what you write about in your books, what you do with, coaching as a CPC, as well as what you do with your own show, which we'll talk about later. It generally all falls under the bracket of emotional intelligence, but there's different domains in there. So we have emotional intelligence in terms of mental health, coping with things like this, such as coping with a pandemic. Mm-hmm. But there's also another side of what you do. And I always wondered what that other title was on your name, because you're CPC, but tell everybody a little bit about the other title, because I think that this is where a lot of people, even if you're doing fine with everything else going on, I imagine that right now, and I've talked about this on another guy's show. I was on David Wygant's show. We talked about this a little bit too last year. Relationships during a pandemic. Oh my gosh. So fire away and tell everybody a little bit about the other side of what you do.
The other letters that you see are certified relationship coach for singles. And what that really is, you hear the word relationship and the first thing you think about is, the significant other. And while that's there, absolutely there, this is about looking at relationships as a whole. You have relationships with everybody, everything, your environment, yourself, your family, your coworkers, yes, your lover, whoever you're with, when you're dating. There's all the different things that we do with ourselves in terms of building relationships with others or destroying relationships with others. And then also maintaining whatever it is that you have in terms of, what are the standards that you have for yourself? What are the values that you hold that are very powerful for you? What do you need to work on to make it better? So, if I gave the simple example of a parent and child, that relationship, if you are a child of parents who are super duper ridiculously strict, okay, and you got to plow through whatever those restrictions are. Some things you totally don't understand. Everybody else is doing this, and then I'm doing this. Why? And to be able to get out of that eventually, when you reach that crossroad, where you got to make your own decisions and have independence, you really don't know what to do, because you keep hearing this relationship that you have with your family that is hovering over you in your mind, and you have your own independent feeling. So how do you sort that out? How do you hold relationship conversations with your parents to say what you want to say? In the world of work, you have, you're an employee and you have a manager, and you have that dynamic. If you are the manager and dealing with your employees, what's the dynamic? How do you give your message? What is your message? How is your message delivered so that you could establish that same respect that you want them to have? I think there's a lot of management mishaps. We hear stories all the time of bad bosses. And is it because they are being bosses? Are they being leaders? Do they want to be a leader? I mean, there is a difference between being a boss and a leader. You can look that up. Point is are we building relationships that are proactive, productive, supportive, respectful? And, when we have to draw the line, how are we messaging that where people can understand it? Sometimes things are being said, like you just mentioned so many wonderful bits of this pandemic, what's going on with the businesses, the relationship that businesses want to keep with their consumers, the relationship of if they're going to discontinue something because of the pandemic, of an opinion, of whatever it is. And they're right now where we are, it feels as though everybody, and I know I don't mean to generally make it a big broad brushstroke, but majority of the people that I'm seeing, they're like at the edge of their seat, at they're ready to fight about something. That's the feeling that I'm seeing. And I don't even know if it matters about facts anymore. And quite frankly, where you and I are concerned, we're hearing what would be considered fact on one side and fact on the other side, and do it for this long and don't do it for this long. So when it comes down to this whole, me doing my part of establishing relationships and helping people understand, what do I do? I need to first drill it down to finding out, like, I don't want to work with couples. I want to work with them individually. They're all built differently. Everyone's built with their own genetic code. So we need to see what their life was, what their history was, where do they want to go in their life? What are their powerful feelings and the strengths and weaknesses that they hold, and where do they really want to go with it? And I think by the work that I've done, when I look at that emotional intelligence, there are people that are just emotionally, when I say dumb, I don't mean to disrespect their intelligence in it. It's just they aren't aware. They don't know that they've been doing this. They've been working on autopilot all this time. And there are emotions in our mind. Like if your mind is like a mansion, there are all these rooms that aren't lit up yet. They're always using the same rooms, constantly lighting it up all the time. The anger one, the frustrated one, the way that people choose to handle their anger. Maybe they go to alcohol, maybe they go to just spewing and projecting on other people. So those rooms are always lit up. What if you just shut those rooms, the lights off there, and try other routes? So that's where I come in, and I navigate with them through the different halls of their mind and say, let's try this emotion. This is what you can say. Use this feeling behind what you want to say. And suddenly they become powerful in the most respectful way, and they get what they want.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you approach that with somebody, a client or whatnot, because you work with them individually, I think that's a difference right there. And I just want to unpack the approach here. So you're working with one person, and if you can share a little bit about what it looks like when you start with, I'm assuming with what you said, you start with them sharing how they're feelings, but is there a certain point where you bring it and say, okay, now let's look from a place of empathy, or how does this make this person feel, or how do you get to that?
I think a lot of times when I start with anybody, and it doesn't even matter if they're a client or they're not a client, people are filled with a lot of pollution and debris in their emotional world. And just like you hear the term of people going non-GMO and non-toxic, and they want to have organic and it's better for your body, right? So we have the same thing happening with us emotionally. And so certain sentences, phrases, experiences, hardships are still swimming in these folks that make them act the way they do, respond the way they do, the reactions that they go through that triggers them to say certain things, or, suddenly assumed to be angry. So when I meet someone for the first time, of course, there's always a conversation. Just want to know, what are they looking for in their outcome? Like, what do they want? And no matter what they want in their outcome, we always go back to, why don't you share all the things that are irritating to you right now? What are the biggest problems in your life? So they'll share with me, like I call it, I have them purchase something that's called the dump journal. And I give them the opportunity to write down every single thing that bothers them until they're done. Okay. And then if it's 10 things, 20 things, if they're like, I don't know how much room I have, well, just keep going until you're done. And when you're done, let's talk. So as they go through dumping this stuff out, they come back to me feeling like I'm ready to go, because they just put everything on paper. Now we're going to prioritize what's important, what isn't. We remove things. And it's almost like, imagine how many of us have probably seen those hoarding shows when you're a hoarder. Not when you are, but when one is. Okay. So you have people who hoard. On the outside, they're wearing their nice outfit and they go to work. They come back. No one knows. Underneath, when you open up that door, you go in the house. Oh my gosh. I see that in the emotional realm, that they're all fine. They're all good. And then they start to talk, or they show me the dump journals, the list. Only till we can get through what's the troubles, what's causing the trouble, what makes them want to cry. And they haven't cried. And I'll even explain this. I work with men, a lot of men, more than I had imagined, because they're looking for a solution. They're always looking for a solution, but they've been harboring a lot of hardship in their heart. And because of the way the roles have been for men, suck it up, man up, deal with it. People just have this expectation that the pressures are high. So when they finally get over to talking to someone like me, I give them the feeling through the way I talk to them that you're safe here. The little boy that was beat to death, in the sense of, like, emotionally speaking, their roles, all the problems that they went through that they suppressed, sometimes comes through in these conversations that they never even imagined would happen. They didn't see that happening, but they needed to unravel those things so that they can kind of get back to who they need to be today. So I think that when we can first approach the things that bother, get the gunk out, that's what we do when we clean house. You got to get all the stuff out. And then you have to organize that stuff into, this is worth getting rid of. This is worth storing and looking at and treasuring because it has a value. And this is so valuable. Why is it over here? It needs to be here. So I'm really reorganizing their emotional, I don't say clutter, but their emotional values, really, so that when they put it back into their house, like their heart, they operate better with it. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I think it's a conversation that a lot of people are going to need to at least have with themselves. I know that sounds kind of, off, but it is, or weird, but it's like, no, talk to yourself. Absolutely. Have this conversation with yourself first.
Yeah.
Where am I at with some of these skills, with mental health, with relationships, not just, romantic relationships, but all sorts, like you said.
Right.
Where am I now, whether it's because of COVID, directly, indirectly, just the whole situation, maybe you had other things happen that year, whatever it is, we're approaching, the end of the first quarter of 2021 already. We're not there yet, but we're approaching it. And I want people to be able to approach it from a place of, okay, the stage is at least set for 2021. Forget about New Year's resolutions. We're talking about setting the stage and starting to take the actions that'll lead to a great year. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to fall into the trap of the end of March is coming. We're looking at spring and it's more of a brace for impact situation of it's just going to be another year. We have to make the best play with the cards we're dealt, metaphorically, right now.
Yeah.
I was again on the David Wygant show, and he talked about the January toilet. People have all these goals, and then it gets flushed down the January toilet.
Right.
Or maybe you don't even have a goal yet. Maybe you don't have the awareness that you need to start looking at these skills. But I think that my prediction is we're all sort of, there's such a broad spectrum of how the past year has affected people, because nobody can really say it didn't affect me at all, because even if you're somebody who is all the way on the other end and you're like, I don't care about pandemic, I'm not going to take it seriously, whatever. Well, then you're still angry about things going on, right? There's nobody who's, it's very rare that somebody will be like, oh no, this is just business as usual for me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was going to say that, let's just go back to before the pandemic. People had problems. People were going through problems as they were. This is regular life problems. And then the pandemic showed up, and it's like, it really was an avalanche of unexpected things happening, one after the other, after the other, after the other. All the things on the news, the things that were said, the fighting, it's like in my perspective, it almost looks like the narratives were set up to have both sides of political thoughts it's turned into where we're all fighting with each other. And I'm imagining like aliens from another planet are watching this going, well, we don't have to worry about invading. They're going to kill themselves. They're crazy. They're all angry with each other. And, the thing I hope to see us do here when we think about the pandemic, okay, when we look at what's happening right now and the number of different shifts and changes that are taking place, first and foremost, I would recommend that what you said was a really good thing to kind of go on is just kind of go back to you. Shut the phone off. I'm glad that you watched this video, but now shut it off. Go away. Okay. Just go away from the electronic devices, find a park. If you can get out, go for a drive, nice and safe. Just kind of be at one with yourself and go back to being in your own element and start dispensing your grievances, however you do it. Sometimes people don't know how to speak and share. So maybe it's just with music. Put together a playlist that gets your brain to a place where you can say, now this feels good. This is what I need. Do things like some people, I know this for a fact that exercise is really very helpful. So if you're someone that used to and you don't, maybe it's time to. Spring's here. So, some people say it's winter. I don't want to go outside. Well, now you can go outside. We're approaching spring. Reorganize your thoughts for how you operate your life in your home. And sometimes these situations that take place, I am a believer of the Almighty. Not everybody might be, but I am. And I always look at these things as shifts where we're asked to make a change. And I don't mean a change for the government or the change for that type of thing. I'm saying within ourselves. What shift do I have to make? Once upon a time, I worked in corporate America, and then all of a sudden a shift took place. And I didn't like that. I knew what I knew there. I was in the insurance industry. I knew that. I just knew that. I don't want to go and do something else. I had to just kind of relax myself and see what is it that I'm very good at? Where else could I go? What else could I do? Who knew I would end up owning my own business and talking about something that's very dear to me, that's very important for me. And I want to give to others so that they can be just as powerful as I feel when I have to manage the challenges in life. The whole idea here is you are born with love, and you're going to get challenges and storms all the way through your life, however they come to you. But it's really about keeping that love through those storms. So loving yourself is very important right now. Eating healthy, exercising, putting really good feelings into your mind, and influential people that might shift your way of doing things so that you can still get through the pandemic until eventually one day everyone's going to find common ground and we're going to be in a much better state of mind. But until then, we've got to let the storm pass and adjust ourselves so that, we can still have peace within ourselves as we're operating through the day.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm so glad that you said, I just want to add to that. You said, start with you, because when we're dealing with a crisis, when we're dealing with our emotions being elevated, the cardinal rule in learning behavior specialty is one, you can't do anything until we de-escalate. And two, you can't ultimately change a behavior unless you replace it with another one that serves the same function. Right. And function is a fancy way of saying purpose. So this is a trick that you might want to write down, but I've shared this before in other formats, but generally the 3-step process is: 1, de-escalate. Find out what calms you down, find out what gets you in your center, what gets you to be, like you said, just get you back to you. Maybe it's just, a funny video or something, whatever it is. I mean, for me, I'll tell you, if I'm angry, I just take a minute and I Rickroll myself. Rick Astley, never going to give you up. Boom. Seriously.
I love it.
Well, maybe we should edit a clip in. No, I won't do that because then it will get
you. I think it'd be so much fun.
I don't monetize these, but it probably won't get, they won't approve it, but because it's copyright. But anyway, you got to do that first. And the second thing is problem solving, right? Problem solving is something that maybe you start with making a list of things that you think you can do yourself. Maybe you make a list of things that you might need to do with a therapist, or maybe with a certified professional coach like yourself, maybe both. Because the way I've always understood it is going, if you need a therapist, if you need, whatever that might look like, that's sort of the larger scale course tuning. And then once you get that, you might want to do some fine tuning with a certified professional coach or with somebody who's a specialty in the area you're looking for. So spend some time problem solving and think, whether that's on a macro level of what I want life to be in 2021, or maybe if it's responding to a crisis situation, how can I get through this? What tools do I have in my toolbox? What don't I have? What do I need? And then try to come up with a plan. And then the third step is obviously enacting that plan. But if it's for you, the third step is also processing with the other person, if there is another person, and saying, hey, this is, I listed the things that got me upset in this situation, but I also thought when I calmed down, you were probably upset at these things, And so then you go back to that person and you process and you start implementing that plan. But you really have to also look at what the behavior is, right? So if there's something that's causing you, maybe there's an insecurity or something that caused you to lash out, you're going to have to find a way to deal with that. Otherwise, it's going to be a Band-Aid solution,
Right.
Right. And that's just something that if we can understand that on a fundamental level, we're going to be so much better off. And another thing I really want to make sure, because this is, you have important conversations like this every week on your show. And I want the watchers to also be able to connect with your show, because I watch it myself, and you do it live. It's a video talk show like mine, but you do it live. So it's a little bit different. So tell everybody a little bit about your show that you co-host and what the mission of that show is.
Well, thank you for that. Well, we have a show. I have a show with my friend who's also a publisher. Her name is Dolly Cortez, and the show is called The DNA Authority. D for Dolly, and the word "and" is on an N, and Anita is the A. So the DNA Authority is our show. And really the show, I like to say this, that it's really designed to get your mind to use all the powers that are within you while you're embracing all of the powerful resources around you. And the reason why I really find the show to be effective, if those people who watch it and they want to learn more from it. When Dolly and I noticed in our relationship, and our friendship, that we know a lot of different people locally, or, easy access in terms of online. I know who this person is. I work with this person. I network with this person, of so many different scopes. Okay. So when someone comes up with a problem, sometimes they want to go to like a really high celebrity that has a lot of marketing put in there. So, and the programs are super expensive, and they might not be able to handle something like that, or they can't afford to travel to go to those wonderful places. And I just think that every single human being should have the right to enjoy life and have resolve and know that there's powers around them. Meaning, when I say powers, there are people that are super talented that have businesses that do what they do, and they can educate you so that you know more, so that you could have a better life. And then you've got all of the powers that are within you, that all you have to do is tap into that and know what to do. So when you have people that are local that actually do many of the same things that one individual you saw on television, that, the cost is like a $2,000 cost, but the local person is, $100, $150. You should be able to be aware of it. So our show really is about bringing all the local talent that we know around, business owners, people that have great influencing capability, to share information, the why behind things that are there, why you should feel inspired to feel a certain way, or have a certain something, or change the way you're thinking. Those things are also very important. So I enjoy it. I love doing it. We navigated through doing the show in the afternoon, maybe in the morning, maybe on a different platform, but now we are here to stay. We do this through the Facebook platform, and it's live Wednesday nights, 8:00 Central Standard Time. And we invite people to come and watch it and interact with us, because we're talking, but if we see comments, we're like, hey, we're going to talk to you. We want to answer your question. And even if you see it on a recording after the show's done, we'll still answer your question. So we do take pride in getting folks to, I'm gonna kind of backtrack to something that you said that meant so much to me, that I don't know if people really can embrace. It happens with medical world. When you're in a medical situation, you kind of wait till you're almost dead before you see the doctor. Like, you wait till it gets really bad. We don't do a lot of preventive measures. Many of us don't. Some of us do, but many of us don't. And in the same token, if you're feeling these woeful feelings, or overwhelmed, or anxious or despair, or anything that kind of has you, or even if you're fine, but you just kind of want to plateau on a higher level, you want to climb to the next mountain, you want the inspiration and you've lost it. These are the things that, he mentioned the certified professional coach, that don't wait till you have more and more moments where you feel like you're dipping in your emotions, that you're unhappy, that you're constantly in this depressed place. Just navigate and give it a try and talk. So if it's something where you're interested, you should just come onto the talk show, watch it, ask some questions, tell us on the Facebook page that, I'd like to hear more about this topic, and we'll bring it up. You can always contact me directly, and with Stephen's help, I'll be glad to talk to you. There's also going on my website, and there's an assessment that I put there that's for free. Just see how happy you are in the different areas of your life. And that just right there starts the process of, let me look a little bit deeper. And you want to do things on a preventive measure than waiting till so much is already done. And now you're picking up so many more pieces than you need to, when you can fight through things so much faster right now.
That's excellent. I love it. So Anita, tell everybody listening how they can get in touch with you, in addition to your show, if they want some coaching.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you allowed me here, and just talking with you. You're my friend, so I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much. For people that want to kind of tap into conversation, just want to volley some thoughts with me to see how you feel about anything, the first thing I'd ask you to do is go to my website, which is interscope365.com. And when you go to interscope365.com, right there, you'll see the assessment just waiting for you, saying, come on in, tell me all about you. It's a quick assessment. It really is. I don't like to make things complicated. There's Myers-Briggs and all sorts of other things out there. You can do that if you like. But in my world, I want to make it quick, fast, and get to the point. So I'd like you to be able to go ahead and fill that out as fast as you can. And as soon as it comes to me, then I'll arrange a time to talk with you, and we'll just start from there and see how things are going.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for coming on the show once again. And I appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. And I think that this is an episode that we addressed a lot of things, but it's a lot of things that people need to be, if they don't want to be thinking about it, they probably need to be thinking about it sooner rather than later. So I hope everybody found this as inspirational and moving as I certainly did recording the episode. This has been COPING-20, episode 21, with guest Anita Myers, and we will see everybody on the next show. Take care and stay safe. Thank you so much.